Tony, could Sorry, I'll say that again now that we're recording. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Tanya, could you do our roll call vote?
Okay. Monserrat,
Present.
Dominique, Paul, Jason,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon. Carmina, Stacy, Taylor,
Present.
Dora,
Good afternoon.
Dr. Segueros,
Present.
Senior,
Here.
thank you.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and move on to agenda adjustments. I don't have anything right now, but does anybody have to leave early? Because I want to make sure we make it to the discussion about attendance. If anyone has to leave early, I can move that towards the beginning.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Then I'll move to have make sure I get the names right. The recommendations to the governing board on budget advisory committee membership, I'll move to have that come first in our study action list.
You need a second?
Yeah.
I second.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? And any abstain? Okay. All right, so we'll go to our minutes from the last meeting, and I'll take a motion for approval for that.
So moved.
I
Second.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? All right. So then we'll move to the 5.3 recommendations to the governing board on budget advisory committee membership. Thank you for letting this come first, because I want to make sure that we're able to get through, everything that we need to in the next few meetings here. We can't ask for any sort of extension to the governing board because they need their budget done. So I want to make sure that the future meetings we are able to discuss everything that we need to in time. So just to kind of go over what the charter says for us. In the charter, it says that the budget advisory committee, so you know what, I missed our call to the audience. I just skipped right over that. Is it okay if we go back to call to the audience? Okay, all right. We did have 2 call to the audience. I'm not used to that. All right. So going back to our call to the audience. Do I read the procedures? The following procedures related to the call to the audience portion of committee meetings will be observed. All public comments for the meeting will be accepted in written form only. All public comments are due to the Budget Advisory Committee no later than 12 p.m. on the day of the committee meeting. Members of the public who wish to address the Budget Advisory Committee shall submit their written comments via email at budgetadvisory@TUSD1.org. In the subject line of your email, please indicate call to the audience and include the topic of your comment. Public comments will be read into the record by either the committee chair or the executive assistant of financial services. The remaining rules for call to the audience will remain in effect. At this time during the meeting, members of the audience may address the committee in regard to items of concern. Each audience member is allowed 3 minutes. At the conclusion of call to the audience, the committee chair will ask if individual committee members wish to respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the committee, or wish to ask staff to review a matter. No more than 2 committee members may address each criticism. Our first letter was from Catherine Donovan. Dear Budget Advisory Committee, my name is Catherine Donovan, and I have been a teacher at Tucson High School for 22 years. We are in desperate need of more funding for monitors on our campus. I have been a teacher here long enough to remember when we were a well-oiled machine and were fully staffed and able to keep our campus safe. The student to monitor ratio is not enough to keep our students and staff safe. Our monitors work tirelessly, but simply cannot cover 3 floors of five buildings and monitor over 3,000 students. THS is like a small city, and we have different needs than any other school in the district. I have been a part of the THS safety committee for several years, and we have analyzed our ever-changing needs, and it is clear that we need 15 monitors minimum and an active substitute pool for monitors when they are sick. What would truly be the best solution to our safety issues would be to reinstate the position of school liaisons. That was a position that worked even more efficiently than monitors, as they worked as hall monitors, but also had an office and the ability to look up students and have a restorative meeting with students who were chronic fighters. We absolutely need more adults in the hallways, but we also need more adults with meaningful relationships with the students. If we had 10 hall monitors and 5 liaison/monitors, our campus would be a much safer place. The only way to prevent more Badger brawls on the news is to fund more monitors and ideally reinstate liaisons as well. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Catherine Donovan. Our second letter is from Cristobal Barajas. To whom it may concern, I write you today as a concerned member of the teaching staff at Pueblo High School. During the time that I have been working at the school, I've been consistently impressed with the work ethic of the teachers, the dedication of the student body, and the stalwart work of the support staff. However, it is in reference to that support staff that I address you today. In a school of over 1,600 students, we have only 6 security guards. Our security is dedicated to the job and does a wonderful job of balancing relationships and policy, but they have been stretched too thin for far too long. There have been serious physical fights on a weekly, if not daily basis recently, and there is simply not enough staff to put out all the fires. This on top of the continuous issues we have had with smoking in the bathrooms and a plethora of other behavior issues the school faces every day. There is simply no way for our monitors to be effective when the student population continues to grow. A possible solution my colleagues have suggested is to have a defined ratio at the district level to ensure there is a responsible minimum number of monitors for the student population, with additional monitors being added as student population increases. I'm sure that this committee has heard similar stories from other schools, with some situations even garnering media attention. My colleagues and I agree that one of the first requirements for a successful school is safety and security for the students, something that can only be secured through respecting our monitors enough to ensure they are properly staffed. Warm regards, Cristobal Barajas. And our third and final letter was from Jeanette Rupel. Hello, Budget Advisory Committee. I am a teacher at Pueblo High School, and I am asking for an increase in monitors at my school. Monitors provide a valuable service to schools. While monitors are there to monitor hallways and bathrooms, monitors are also good role models that listen to students and encourage them to focus on important things like schools, extracurriculars, and strong, healthy friendships. Pueblo is budgeted for 6 monitors, and this is too few monitors for a school Pueblo's sized. Pueblo has increased enrollment for several years in a row now, and we need more monitors to help keep students safe and accountable. Pueblo's had many fights this year, as well as many drug violations. More adults are needed to guide students to class and encourage students to focus on their classes. With only 6 monitors, temporarily 5, our monitors have had a hard time taking breaks and getting lunch. Sometimes our monitors will forego an important break because they are needed by students and staff. Often when our monitors do take their lunches and breaks, the school is left short-staffed, allowing students to take advantage of this lack of supervision. Our students are clever enough to know when the monitors are on their breaks and take advantage of this. Pueblo's monitors are overworked. Please find room in the budget for more monitors for Pueblo. Thank you for your time and support, Jeanette Rupel. And if anyone has a comment, we can take those. All right, hearing none, I will now move on to 5-3, the recommendations to the governing board on membership. Okay, So I was going to read the charter here to just give you an overview of what kind of our rules from the governing board say about attendance and membership. The BAC may request that the TUSD governing board dismiss a committee member who has had 3 consecutive unexcused absences, so 3 consecutive unexcused, or a total of 5 absences in any 12-month period. Requests to the governing board to dismiss require a majority vote of the committee where a quorum is present. So we do have quorum tonight. We have over 50% of our members present here. Our charter says 12 members, but we did have 2 members that resigned since the last meeting. So right now we have 10 members total, which is why we only needed 6 tonight for quorum. So we went back through the attendance of members all the way from the beginning of when the committee had started to kind of see which members would have had more than 3 in a row unexcused absences, or that total of 5 in any 12-month period. So I believe it's okay to say the names of them, right? Okay. So Dominique Calza, she hasn't attended since December 14th of 2021 and hasn't responded to any calls or emails that we've sent to her. Armenia Frias has had 7 absences. That doesn't count our last meeting where we didn't end up being able to have it. So 8 if you include that. Those are from December 14th of 2021 to January 19th of 2023. She did attend on our very first meeting of this fiscal year on October 5th. And she said that she was still interested, but that the emails had been going to her spam folder. But then we haven't seen her since the 5th. So those were the only.
I'm here now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. Okay, so then that would no longer be in violation of the attendance. So it would just be Dominique, who was the only member where like the 3 in a row or the 5 in the 12-month period were. So does anybody have like questions or comments about what the policy is or about details about the attendance there?
Taylor, are you looking for a motion or just for discussion right now?
Either one.
Okay. I guess I'll wait for a moment to see if other people have questions.
So as far as like our quorum goes, right now we need 6. If we did happen to remove 1 member, we would still, if I'm correct, need 6 people. So we would have to remove 2 members to get it to be 1 less for quorum. Yeah, Jason.
So I would move forward the name that you had mentioned. And clearly this is not a personal decision. It's just looking at the reality, and I'm sure the person's busy and everything else. But I'd rather, if there's other people that we would like to discuss, I'd rather see them as separate motions. And so I'd see it as just a motion for this one person. And then if there's others that we want to discuss, we could discuss those as separate motions. So I don't know if you want to take a second.
Taylor, do you want me to share the screen with the attendance sheet, or do you just want to talk through it?
I have it in front of me, so it's up to the rest of y'all if anybody would find it helpful to see those.
I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, Ricky, could you share that? Was there any second on that motion? If not, I'll go to Albert's comment.
So is there a motion on the table to remove that individual who's missed since December of 21, I think you said?
Yeah, so Jason's motion was to remove just that 1 member who hasn't attended since December 14th and hasn't responded.
And that motion is in compliance with the board direction on membership attendance, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then I second.
So just to kind of clarify the motion there, it's for just that one member. Can we find her on here? Yeah, Dominique Calza, the second line there. So you can see the absences since August 25th. And then the January before that, she had attended the last time. Okay, so all in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Right, so that will pass. And then, let's see, is this all of the screen here?
Yeah, that's all of it.
Okay.
This is last fiscal year and this year, since you want to look at a running 12-month total, right?
Yeah.
And then the running totals are on the side so that you guys can see.
Okay. All right, is there any other discussion or motions on that item?
I have a question, well, more of a comment. We talked about this the other night at the board meeting, so if I'm looking at the running totals here, and the next person under Dominique is Mr. Cunningham, I don't know if it's worth also removing him, or does the committee feel that right now just starting one?
Yeah, that was something that I was kind of also considering. I went back all the way like from the beginning of the committee. And found he had attended 33% of meetings. He does usually let us know when he's not able to attend. And if I'm reading this right, he doesn't have more than 5 in a 12-month period because it's 4 in a 12-month period. Jason, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I think I just wanted that clarification is, so if what we're looking at is just by the numbers, that I guess my question would be, would we have the ability to do so even though based on what I'm hearing, that wouldn't meet the threshold of 3 in a row or 4 or 5 in a 12-month period? So I guess that's my question.
If I understand correctly, it's ultimately up to the governing board to decide whether to actually remove this person or not. We're just voting to make a motion that we recommend it to the board. Yeah, Stacy.
Sorry, I was trying to figure everything out also. Can we recommend, and I don't know if the board says this person's like on a wait or I don't know, temporary status or something. Like, I do feel like he's attended a lot. I know we have really busy schedules. At the same time, it does make it really hard because we all have very busy schedules that we're prioritizing this time. And I know this year a lot has been hard to reschedule, get to quorum because it is official board. So maybe like that they can give like a warning. I don't know if anything was done by that, or if he's a person that reads even the board minutes to then represent this. And because he's not here, I just was wondering if there's any communication before or after, before we say anything or vote.
Yeah, Tanya, do you know if he had said anything to you before today's meeting?
I have not heard anything from Paul. He hasn't responded to the survey regarding the meetings or any of the emails.
Okay. Was he at the meeting that we tried to hold on November, whatever that was?
He was not.
Okay, so I mean, if we include that one and today, then I guess that's 3 in a row.
And I'm sorry, I just want to say that I'm jumping in here, but there has been some times where we've even had to leave early, or he's had to leave early. I think even the time before, which as somebody who runs committees, we can, as a committee, go on the minute we lose quorum. So that makes it really tough. And so I don't want to judge people, but that kind of freezes us. And then we can't vote or even pick a date because we don't have quorum. So it stops all our processes. So I do think that I don't mean to be the hard person here, but that we need to really consider that.
Mhm. At the discussion with the board that we had at their last meeting, they also were discussing about the fact that they are allowed to change our charter. So we could also request that the board change the charter so that it's maybe a little bit more strict than 5 in a 12-month period and 3 in a row. Jason?
Yeah, I think just what Stacy was saying, it's really hard. You know, I mean, and my schedule is just like everybody else's, right? So I arrange for my kids' transportation or whatever it might be to make this possible. And so, and it stinks because for me, just me as somebody who's been on this since inception, it stinks when we have TUSD staff who show up, who are staying, and they had to make the same kind of concessions with their own family and their own work life. It's kind of embarrassing, honestly. So again, nothing personal to the person that we already made a recommendation. And if I haven't heard this as a formal motion from Stacy, but I just feel like that it's really, really, I hate that we're having this, and I appreciate the people who are doing the work, but I just feel really embarrassed that we have a staff member or staff members who are sitting for half an hour a couple of times already.
Did you have an official motion that you wanted to make on that? Or either of you? Anyone?
I can make an official motion that we recommend that he be put on, I don't know how to say it. Jason's always good at writing the motions. That he be recommended due to attendance on removal from the committee.
Mhm. Yeah, I think another way that we could go about this is if we request, you know, if we feel that it's a little bit too flexible to say 3 in a row unexcused and 5 in a 12-month period, we could also recommend for the board to change that, and then maybe he's kind of fitting into that sort of.
You wouldn't be able to do that tonight, Taylor, though. You'd have to
Yeah.
make that a future agenda item.
Okay. Oh, to recommend the change of the charter.
Right, yeah, because that's not on your agenda. You're only
Gotcha.
voting on potential removal of members right now.
Okay, I see. Thank you. All right, I will second that motion then. So could we clarify what the motion was before we say our ayes and nays? I can do it too. So I believe, if I'm correct, Stacy, the motion was to recommend to the board that this member kind of be placed on a probationary status, letting him know that he needs to attend.
Yes, because it says the actual dates in the charter. Is that correct? Committee people?
So are we saying that this individual is within the scope of what the board has established as reason for dismissal from this committee?
He is not within that. He's at 4 in a 12-month period. So he would not be within the charter to recommend a dismissal. That's why I believe Stacy had recommended it as a like probationary type status. So if he doesn't show up today and he doesn't show up at the next meeting, then he's fitting that 3 in a row unexcused. But as of this point, he would not be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion before we vote on that one? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, both of those will pass. All right, so let's move on to 5.1, discussions for school safety improvements. We did have the presentation at our last official meeting that was able to be held, and it was kind of got cut short in the middle of our discussion. So I just wanted to bring this back today, just as a quick discussion. I don't know that we necessarily need to make a motion for any recommendations to the board, but I did want to bring it back just for a discussion, because at the next governing board meeting, they are going to be presented with the school safety information. So I just wanted to see where our minds were at with that. If anybody has any like lingering questions or concerns from that discussion that I know was a while ago. Yeah, Stacy.
I'm sorry, I'm struggling today. Anyways, I would also like, I'm hoping that you can give feedback to them. I think they did a good job about, like, we talked about area and acres for the high schools, but in the middle schools, they did not have that. And I know some of our middle schools are very big, like Valencia is, and then some are very small. But at least for me, as I was looking over it, it gave me a better picture to see size and capacity that way, both with students and then just actual acreage. So I'm hoping that maybe they could add that to the presentation for middle school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point. I guess something that I was curious about was, I've kind of heard this idea thrown around of a monitor ratio. If I understand it correctly, right now, it's that you have to have one minimum per site and you can't decrease from one fiscal year to the next. And so I'm just curious, from someone who's in more of the safety field, what like a reasonable monitor ratio would be that's recommended, or if there's any districts around us that have something like that already in place, what those numbers are. So we can also bring up questions later during the request for information 7.1, but if there's any other discussion on this before we go to benefits.
Can I ask for clarification on this particular item?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're being asked to make a recommendation to the governing board specifically on what? On the assignment of the ratios to each school?
Maybe Ricky, you can clarify exactly more what the governing board was looking for.
So they're looking for a recommendation on what you all believe, based on what's been presented to you, should be, a budgeted recommendation in terms, whether that's a ratio, a number, so that we can, once we start budget development processes, we can decide, okay, this is the recommendation, the board may or may not approve it. And whatever they approve, then obviously we need to allocate resources, right? So, we've looked at this, different ways. Like Taylor said, it's a minimum of one. The campus monitor ratios have not moved since before the pandemic, so more than 3 years ago. And they've been frozen at that point, and then we've added kind of like ad hoc, right? And to Stacy's point, the acreage or the size of the campuses aren't taken into account, right? Valencia is a very large campuses. We've got very large elementary campuses as well. And, kids are creative. There are a lot of hidden corners. So, more eyes obviously is always a good thing. And so what does that look like, right? Because we can't, one thing I can tell you is the thing that's kind of been out there in the public sphere has been a very low ratio, like student to counselor ratio, and I can tell you, we can't immediately afford that. So it doesn't have to be, Albert, like a number or something. If, you know, based on what you've heard, if you think you should focus on a grade level, if you should focus on, you know, on acreage versus student population, it's really kind of like your oyster in terms of how you want to craft the recommendation. And then, you know, ultimately these aren't final until you're done at the end. And you guys can tweak these recommendations as you kind of chug along until you finish your work.
Right. So where do we factor in? We heard two call to the audience comments today about increased disciplinary issues at one high school and concerns about what's been happening at Tucson High School. Has this conversation at the administrative level discussed that aspect of it, the discipline rates per school?
Those are taken into consideration to a certain extent, right? Because obviously we want to make sure that we're addressing, you know, where there is, I guess, you know, for lack of a better word, demand, you know, where there's greater disciplinary issues on campuses. But there isn't, the issue becomes, Albert, is not so much addressing those as the need arises. It's addressing something that, you know, either it might be deemed equitable or, you know, that takes into account other factors besides student population. Because discipline is, you know, it's an ad hoc measure, right? I mean, that moves every year, and then it's something that, you know, kind of greasy wheel, right? Tucson High is big, it's the flagship, everybody's going to notice. But are there issues at Pueblo, like the call to the audience member mentioned? Yes, there are. Do those make the headlines? No, they do not. So again, we take all of those factors into consideration, and I know school safety makes sure that they increase their presence as things arise, but that's not necessarily a permanent fix. And I think what administration is looking for is a recommendation to the board that at least would lead us in the direction of a potentially permanent fix to address some of the concerns we've heard.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
Ricky, could you possibly share the impact of the passage of the bond as it relates to security?
Yeah, so I know I've looked at this bond stuff a lot, but I don't know it by heart in terms of the numbers. And I can tell you right now. So school safety, obviously, it was the number one kind of factor, right, that we were looking at when we put the bond out for voter approval. And let me get you that number real quick. So we're looking at investing just over $70 million. So just about 20%-ish, maybe less, of the bond is going to go into various school safety improvements, cameras, fencing, you know, doors, windows, a lot of the low-hanging fruit in some instances that just we haven't been able to accomplish. So we know that technology and that equipment is going to be helpful. But in some instances, it's protecting the perimeter, right? Keeping outside people from coming in. The cameras obviously are in a different kind of boat because we want to be able to kind of cover those angles, the hidden spots, right? Where kids know that these, you know, Mr. Freed's not going to come back here because he doesn't know this place, kind of thing, right? So that's where those kind of elements are going to be helpful. So there is, you know, capital funding coming, but that's going to take a little bit. I know the immediacy is staffing, right? Because that tends to be a quicker response.
Stacy?
In looking at the PowerPoints that they sent us about like even ratios, there was highlighted schools, Pueblo being one of them, that if you look at monitor to student ratio is the highest ratio of the high schools. So I do think that there could be maybe some overall look or equity when you look at just straight even monitor to student ratios, whether you're looking at the high schools or at even the middle schools. There's also some that fall into there, and middle is even K-8. And I'm thinking of right now, like Roberts Naylor, when I look at that and the amount of monitors they have, you know, it's 1 to 382 students at Roberts Naylor, which is on the very high end compared to the rest of the middle schools. So to me, as both a principal and looking at that, more kids, you just need more eyes. And then more eyes both builds relationships and can avoid situations. So it's already highlighted on the PowerPoint, but I think that needs to be recommended to the board if you're really looking at ratios or hard numbers, that it should fall in line with maybe everybody else.
Montserrat?
Yeah, am I reading it wrong? It looks like CE Rose, which is not highlighted. Actually, the ratio is higher than at Roberts Naylor. Roberts Naylor is 382. CE Rose looks like it's 384. Almost 385. So I don't know. I'm looking at the ratio. If that's one route we want to take.
Okay. So we don't need, any sort of official recommendation tonight. I'm okay with pushing that off to another meeting so that we can think about that some more. Maybe then get more information that we need. Is there any other discussion or motions on this item? Okay, so let's just keep that ruminating in the back of our brains for a little bit longer, and maybe during our request for information, if there's specific things that we want to bring up, we can do that then. So without further ado, let's move on to our benefits presentation.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Do I need to share my screen and pull up the slide, or I don't know that?
We have access to it, but it might be helpful.
Okay, let me go ahead and I'll just go ahead and do that. So it's just one slide for everyone to see. Hopefully you can see it. Okay, so this is my first budget committee meeting. I'm John Fernandez, Chief Human Capital Officer, overseeing human resources, and which also includes our benefits division. We're about, what you have in front of you is just a slide to kind of summarize our medical pharmacy plan, some of the costs associated with it, and kind of let you know where we are in the process of developing a proposal for the coming year's plan to be adopted by the board sometime this spring. We're hoping in the February-March timeframe. So we're a self-funded plan, and we bring a proposal will be going before the Employee Benefits Trust Board. There will be a presentation given next week, I believe. So that we meet once a month. So December, there'll be a presentation that our consultants will provide, outlining our experience with our plan this year, as well as projections for the next plan year, based on where they think costs are going, and so forth. There'll be about a month in between December, the presentation, in January, where we expect the EBT to go ahead and vote with a recommendation for the governing board. And at that, between December and January, any adjustments to plan design and so forth will be discussed for the trust consideration and final vote in January, and then we'll bring it to the board in February for the governing board's review. For those of you, if you're familiar with our plan, our medical plan, we currently offered three options for our employees, a PPO option, then two high deductible plans. And you'll see the rates that our employees plus employees and dependents are would pay monthly for that coverage. So I don't know if you have any questions about the specifics in terms of the numbers. I just think it would be just important to show that over time. I think over the last couple of years, the increases have gone up about 4.5, 4 to 5% per year. I believe the projection for next year has been in the 8% range, just to ensure that there's adequate room to fund benefits. And then I think also of note is that the governing board has elected to assist with the subsidies to help hold employees harmless over the last couple of years, so that employees did not feel the pain from the increases that we've incurred. So I know that'll be a discussion point and consideration this year. But the expectation was with ESSER funds and other available resources, the governing board was able to offset those increases so that the employees did not see the increases, fulfill the increases in their pockets. We're about a few days away. I guess next week we'll be looking at the projections for next year. We hope that the final projections will be in that 4 to 5% range. That would be a good outcome. And medical costs, pharmacy costs are increasing. If it does end up in that 4 to 5% range, I think that's a good position for the district, and it will give an opportunity to for the board to consider how it wants to operate in light of those projected costs. This is the last year of our contract with our current providers. So this is our 5th year. So there won't be substantial changes in the design and what's being offered. But after the board takes action to approve the coming plan year, we are poised to go out with an RFP for the next providers for our medical and pharmacy plans. So that'll be something that we start in the spring. Of course, the effort is always to try to manage costs as well as ensure that we offer our employees quality benefits to attract and retain our employees within our system. So I guess with that, I'll go ahead and pause there, and if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to do so.
Sorry, I was muted. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you. I just, my question is, it's going a little bit historical because I've been in the district for a long time. There was a time that one of the plans was offered to employees for free. And I guess I would ask, what would be the change in cost if we were to change one of these plans, whichever I guess is the least expensive, such that an employee could have that without any charge?
So I'm not familiar with when that's been offered. I know that right now the parameters that we operate within is that for the PPO plan, we currently have built into the employee bargaining agreement a built-in cap on the employee share at 15%, while the district pays 85% for a single employee under the PPO plan. And that's one issue that we're looking at because while it makes that attractive for that category, as soon as employees have children, have spouses, have dependents, they're looking at other options, and we have to look at ways to subsidize those those plans in a way that's fair and allows, we hope will be affordable to, across the various categories. So I don't know, I haven't looked at what it would take to offer, to subsidize a plan completely, But those are the parameters that we're operating with right now. I see Ricky might have more history on it.
Yeah, the free plans went away a long time ago. Because financially they're not sustainable, especially at the time that they were free plans, we were not a self-insured school district. We bought, on the market like most of the school districts around us do. When we moved to self-insured is when we decided, what our plans would look like. To move people from, to make the employee only share like zero for those that are on the high deductible health plan, we need to absorb about $2.3 million. But as John was mentioning, our PPO plan is by far the most expensive. This fiscal year, our total, give or take estimate for health insurance is $37 million. We spent 22 million on PPO. And that's the singles, the families, the dependents, like everybody who's in that category. The people in the high deductible health plans, essentially, they subsidize people who are on PPO. So everybody gets charged the same per member fixed rate amount. But because there are so many overruns for people who are on the PPO option, the high deductible health option has to pick up the tab for those, because people on the high deductible health option are essentially they're shopping their plan versus the PPO. You've got a predictable $15 copay for your primary care, or, $200 copay to go to the ER versus going to your primary care. And so because of that predictability, it's more expensive for the employer to take that into account. And so, that's why the zero cost is just not an option. And then just to tack on to something John said, so while we're experiencing 8%, Pima County, which is the next largest self-insured trust, they're gonna do 11% on employees. So, and all they have are high deductible health plans. They don't even offer any other option. So this is the way of the world in terms of health insurance. And so we definitely need, John and I have to kind of thumped our skulls on the walls because we're looking for some options at this point. That 8515 is I'll be honest, is a huge barrier in trying to create some flexibility and some creativity with our other plans.
Albert?
Hey, John, this is Albert Siqueiros. First time talking to you, first time meeting you. So here's my question to you. I was struck by what Ricky said about Pima County only having the high deductible option for their employees. Have you looked at that, what that would look like for us if we eliminated some of the offerings or went to one single offering, what that would do financially for the district?
I think obviously it's, we've had some discussions about different scenarios. So, I mean, I think, let me start out by, I know the board has been very active in looking for creative scenarios. And so as part of that, we've looked at, there are these affordable care health organizations that are out there that, we've been encouraged to look at. And as we've looked at those, creative options, they only work if you limit the available options for the employees, because otherwise, if you create the options, some employees will continue to pick the most expensive ones, and and these are the ones that are going to be driving the cost. So I think that's the kind of guidance and the input we're gonna need as we go through the discussion about the future, about whether we can continue to offer all the options that we do today and offer them at the subsidies that are currently in place. But that's work in progress. So we do have we have Valley Schools Management Consulting Group as our benefits consultant, and we've been really pushing them to help us think through all the options for what we can offer and how do we limit the increase in costs. We haven't fleshed that out. I guess to be direct, we haven't, fleshed out a plan that would eliminate any of the options at this point. But, we know that other jurisdictions have had to look at, what it would look like if we limited, for instance, got rid of the PPO and just did high deductible plans like Pima County is doing.
Just to clarify before I move on to Jason's comment here, so if we eliminated the PPO option, that would save us money?
I'm gonna yield to Ricky. If that were the case.
Potentially, yes. So I've done back of the napkin, well, not back of the napkin, no. I've done some review of dollars and cents in terms of saying get rid of PPO and move to high deductible, just to kind of like evaluate dollars and cents. We've been asked about moving to the state's health insurance plan, right? The one that the universities have, and what that would cost. And so obviously we've, I defer to John on those in terms of what the options ultimately will be. But yeah, there is a savings to be had from eliminating the PPO option, because it would also allow us to take some of those dollars and make the other high deductible health plans potentially more robust, because we'd be able to reinvest the $22 million we spend on PPO right now.
Jason?
Taylor, why don't we go to people who haven't spoken, since I already got to ask first, and then come back to me.
Okay, Montserrat?
Yeah, thank you. I have two questions. Any idea the percentage of employees who are on the PPO plan? And then my second question is, has there been any staff engagement with regards to exploring options, like, I don't know, as simple as a staff survey or, I'm sorry, and I do have a third question. Any idea what percentage of employees have both themselves and their families versus just themselves? And if there's a cost savings there, like offering health insurance, I'm just trying to think of if people just put themselves on their insurance because their spouse or their partner can put the family on their employer's insurance. Is there any kind of incentive for doing something like that if there were to be a cost savings? Sorry, that was 3 questions.
So the first question is that we have around 6,000 members who are members of our medical and pharmacy plans, and about 40 to 50% of them are on the PPO plan, and then the other 2 are divided, essentially between the other 2 plans. So about half of our members are on the PPO plan. The second question about staff and input, yes, we are planning to do, especially as we get ready to think about an RFP for a new benefits provider and what we want to see there. We are planning an employee survey on benefits. So we're working with our consultants to design that survey that we hope will go out early next year, as we head into discussions about the RFP. So that input can be will hopefully be factored into that process. And then the third, I'm sorry, I didn't really catch the third or the gist of the third question. You mentioned something about
I'm just wondering if there's any kind of idea on data on the costs of insuring just an employee versus insuring employee and family, and what the breakdown is of those 6,000 members. Is it 50% insure both themselves and their family, or is it, what that is, and if there's any cost savings around that?
Well, we can provide a breakdown of the employee only, and plus the spouse, plus the children, or family, those family options. No, I've not given consideration or done any further analysis on what it would look like just to fund the employees and not their dependents. We'd be happy to look into, maybe put my head together with Ricky and think about that. I do know that we're operating in an environment here in Tucson where all, the major employers are kind of working, especially the government employers are struggling with the same issues. So I do have some outreach to Pima County just to kind of, start to put our heads together and see how creative we can be, with our partners out there. I know the city of Tucson is going through the same review of their benefits offerings. And I think they're even conducting an audit of their employees to clean up any situations with, eligible dependents who, on the plan and so forth. And then in my discussions, because it's such a big issue, I've been pushed to make those, bring those conversations together with other partners like El Rio and other providers who have been interested in trying to figure out whether there are ways we can work together with other entities. But again, that's not an easy task to pull off. So, I work with Ricky and the superintendent to see, where we want to go with these conversations. But everyone's facing the same situation with the cost of health care going up and the pharmaceutical costs, also, rocketing. So it's just not a pretty picture. So when we say 5%, we're kind of, crossing our fingers that we can hold to that, because we know it could be much worse based on what other jurisdictions are saying. If I could just mention from the employees, from the HR standpoint of the benefits, I mean, I know Ricky and I know the budget, looking at costs. The real challenge for us is we are, of course, trying to continue to recruit and retain talent in the district. Well aware of employees who've had to leave the district, single family parents with dependents who just can't afford the cost of benefits. So when they get an offer, sometimes that's the trigger to make the jump. In terms of retention, comments that have been made are, we're very grateful for some of the compensation adjustments that have been made. However, if these get eaten up by the benefits increases, it kind of leaves everybody, in the same position. So it really is a concern from the staffing side that we try to figure out how to limit these costs. And so, we're going to continue to do our work to try to see what these options are to limit the cost, but still offer, good coverage for our employees.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So we obviously know that PPO is the most expensive, and it's costing a lot of money for both employee and also the district. So my question is, going back to what Jason was saying, if there was an incentive of basically having free benefits for the employee and removing the PPO plan or option, would that be a cost savings for everybody? Would that be really a win-win for everybody, for families and also for the district?
No, it wouldn't. Unfortunately, we'd be moving 2,000 lives from the PPO plan to the high deductible health plan. And even though the high deductible health plan is cheaper on a dollars and cents, like on a fixed expense, it's how people use it, right? And so the usage is what kills us, both on the pharmacy side and the medical side. And so it's not really gonna, there's gonna be some benefit there, but it's really just gonna be the use that's gonna drive the cost. There wouldn't be any savings realized by moving singles to single PPO to like a $1,500 high deductible health plan, because ultimately they're going to use it at the same rate, and we're still going to have to pay that same amount. So we've looked at that, and it doesn't save money to go completely free.
Okay,
unfortunately.
just wondering, because what if the PPO was left like that and then offered zero free benefits for the employee? Would that be an incentive for some of the employees that are on PPO? Would they switch because it's free for them? I mean,
I mean, in a way, I see your point, right? Like if we say, hey, high deductible health plan costs you nothing,
right.
say on a PPO and it's going to cost you something, yes, but that 85/15 still kills us, right? Because we always have to make sure that no matter how high the price of PPO goes, for that single member only in PPO, we always have to cover 85%. So, and because that language is baked into every one of the employee agreements, TEA, AFSCME, ELI, CWA, we're bound to do that. So any dollars that we would be able to do to offer that free HDHP would automatically be redirected to keeping the cost at 85/15 between TUSD and the employee on PPO. That's the huge driver. That's where we just don't have any flexibility.
Okay, thank you.
Jason?
Thank you. Would it be possible to, I know that when for myself, when I've sought insurance as a younger person, that some companies offer child or 2 children or 3 children as opposed to child/children. Is that something that the district could look at that says, here's what your rate would be if you had 1 child, here's what your rate is with 2 children, with 3 children, and maybe the maximum is 4 or above. And I'm just thinking, clearly for me, it's more expensive for the district to pay for my 2 children than it would be if I only had 1 child, or at least I say clearly just because of the cost. So would that be something that the district could potentially do, and could save the district potentially some money, and more so it could save the employee some money?
I mean, we can look at a variety of those scenarios and then cost them out. I think, I think with the children, I mean, unless you're talking about the newborns, which are very expensive. But what's really driving the costs are the sick adults, right? So I think that that whole 80/20 principle, it's a 90/10 principle where 10% of our members are driving 90% of the costs. And that's really the challenge. I mean, as part of what we want to do is re-examine, it's not a magic bullet, but really re-examine the wellness offerings that we provide. Currently, we do offer wellness programs where we're only reaching about 10% of our members. And so we're also, as part of this, looking at other options that would increase engagement and participation, because at the bottom line is, like I said, the 10% of our sick adults with these high costs, therapies and frequency of treatment and so forth, those are really not going away. They're getting worse. And no matter how we try to nickel and dime the rest of the program, that's what's driving the cost. So, and they'll find them in our PPO plan, and that's part of what we're doing to try to also offset that. But we want it to be well and better, and that might help us turn the curve, bend the curve on these the cost of care. And the pharmaceutical, as you can be keeping an eye on the drug costs. We recently had to put some parameters in place to address some of these anti-diabetic. Well, they were the weight loss drugs that were being prescribed, that are also anti-diabetics, but with those costs, we were seeing going up like they are across the country, across the world, for to deal with off-label types of prescriptions being prescribed for weight loss versus diabetes. So we've had to put those kinds of parameters in place just to kind of address those recently spiking costs that we were seeing in our program as well.
Yeah, I found it interesting when you mentioned like the impact on staffing, especially from a selfish standpoint. I would very much hate to get rid of the PPO option, because that's what I have to deal with, having a disability. I mean, even when I had COVID this week and was nearly having to go to the hospital, couldn't afford the $500 ER visit and didn't go. So even on the PPO plan, it's healthcare costs are definitely a struggle.
Yeah, and I don't think that we would ever, I don't think there's any scenario where we've been just talking about necessarily eliminating a program or going from 85-15 to something more extreme. We were just looking at what flexibility could we have to share those costs and subsidies across the various categories. So it was really that kind of, I think it's that kind of flexibility we're looking for. Not to just say 85-15 now we're going to go right to 50-50, right? We're not looking at that type of change. It's just an extra tool in our toolkit so we can figure out if we can spread that subsidy more broadly across the different categories of members and members in our plan. So that's what we're looking at. So I don't know. I mean, we have talked about whether there's something we bring to the table, negotiating table, whether that's something that we'll be able to discuss and make progress on. If not, it just presents a barrier to doing things the same way we've been doing them, over this past year. So when we go out for RFP, that may be the point in time where we have to make some of these decisions about what can we offer, within our means. And like I said, I think we're still. I mean, there's some draft information going around in preparation for next week's meeting. But when we meet with the trust, but once we have that meeting and we get to that meeting, we'll have the documents, reflecting the underwriting analysis, our current and projected costs, so that anyone interested can get a better understanding of what the experience has been under our current plan and what that might look like going forward.
Is there any? Yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't speak for anybody else, especially since we're all through Zoom, so I can't even have my little whispers to somebody next to me. When we've done this work 2 years ago and last year, I felt a little bit more like things were cut and dry as to what a recommendation could look like. And I don't feel that way this year. And that's maybe just the nature of the work that we've been tasked with this year. And so for just me, for one, I think where I'm struggling at is what could a recommendation look like? I mean, I could tell you, we could have the conversation within this committee to make a recommendation to the governing board about this 85-15 split. And that could have, I think, some value. But then, of course, those are negotiated items. So it's not, I mean, we would be a drop in the bucket when it comes to just what the pieces that would have to be moved to make something like that happen. So, I'd love to say, yeah, a recommendation is find a way to create a plan that's free for employees, as an employee, as somebody who's married to a district employee. And same thing with the security pieces. I would love to say, yeah, we should just increase the number of monitors by 1 at every school site. And the cost doesn't really seem to matter, but clearly it's just not that easy. So I think I would ask maybe whether that's John or Ricky or Taylor, or maybe it's Natalie as our board contact, what the board is looking for a recommendation that would be really feasible and would be helpful and meaningful to the governing board.
I don't want to speak.
I know. I think we'll defer to Natalie.
Yeah.
Thanks. This stuff is always really tricky, right? So, I mean, as somebody, I obviously don't get paid from the district, but I myself work for a small local nonprofit, so I have to think about what's going to be best for my family, and we're in open season right now. So I'm trying to figure out if we're staying where we are, or if I'm looking somewhere else on our, so, it's, to be honest, I think, just a little bit more further discussion on what you think is fair. I mean, I want to defer to some of our employees because, I mean, I believe it was you, Taylor, who couldn't go to the ER. So it's, and recently we had to use the ER ourselves. So it's really expensive. So I'm not sure, maybe I defer to either Ricky or John and what exactly would be palatable for everybody. I mean, nobody's gonna be totally happy, but I'm not sure exactly what next steps are. This is like my least favorite part of being a board member, to figure out the benefits package to make it, affordable for our employees, but also, competitive too. So I always kind of, for this, I'd like to defer to them a little bit.
I think maybe John and I come up with some, here's like options A, B, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe potentially add dollars and cents wherever dollars and cents are applicable, right? Because some of the ideas that you mentioned are, they're pretty good. Like Jason's like, I never thought about covering 1 kid versus 2 kids versus 3 kids, right? Although, if you're having more than 2 kids, like in 2023, dude, have you seen the price of milk? I mean, really? So, so it's just that's one that I think something Montserrat said about looking at, where our families are, right? Where the coverage is happening more so. I mean, we already see those patterns and just kind of maybe not totally bombarding you with a lot of information, but kind of showing you like different things. And then you can kind of see like, this is the one that rises to the top for us versus this one. Because I know, like I said, John and I have kind of cracked our skulls trying to figure out like all of these things and the we wish, but
Yeah, I think if I could, Ricky, I mean, I'm happy to work with Ricky and come up with some options. I mean, obviously, I don't like to worry about the dollars and cents, since I'd like to leave that to Ricky to figure out. But my lens is going to be really on, there's an experience that the employees have gone through the last 2 years in terms of the benefits of what's being offered, and I'm not hearing so much about the design of the plan in terms of, options for providers and who my provider is. It really, I think, has come down to, for me, it's going to come down to what that cost impact will look like, when when we get to next year, what that price shock might be if it's, at a certain level versus, under option A, B, or C. I think that's kind of my question. What is tolerable? What won't, trigger some of our employees who are on the edge to start looking for other options? That's really going to be my lens. We know that costs are going up, but what can we do to make sure we're doing it in a balanced way?
Albert?
Yeah, just rather quickly here, John. Can you also provide, I think you mentioned that the survey has gone out, I believe.
It will be going out, actually. We're working on that for early next year.
I'm sure the board will entertain input from that survey and as they make their decision, but it would be helpful for us too to have some of that information, if at all possible, before our time is up for this year. I don't know if that's doable, but certainly also to see what the various work group representatives say about this as well. And Ricky, I don't know how it is today, but is that part of the negotiation still to the benefits package?
Yeah, we're about to start negotiations for next fiscal year. We have brought it up. And yeah, I mean, you can imagine, Albert, right? Like, if you're going to pay more than 15 cents on the dollar and wages aren't necessarily going up in the same way, people are going to have a problem with it. So we haven't been very successful, but we've started to broach the topic with the employee groups.
Dora?
So have we even, one of the things that I was going to bring up was basically the survey. So thank you for bringing that up. But I also wanted to check. I know that one of the main things that we focus on is to attract new employees and to sustain the employees we have, because it's costing the district a lot of money every time an employee leaves, and then we have to retrain and all these different things. Have we looked into that to see how much we would save if there was an incentive to pay, like offer a benefit for the employee only? I mean, paying for just the insurance and attract that and advertise that to attract new employees from other districts or from wherever.
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. I mean, I think that I've heard that several times through this conversation, so I'm happy to like repress to see if we can work through a scenario to see what that might look like in dollars and cents. And yes, we have been thinking about how we can improve our marketing of the district. I mean, Ricky and I were just talking about, depending what your retirement system you're in, if you're in, we offer a pretty good retirement package. How does that look when you look at our benefits offerings, plus some of the compensation changes too? So I will say that I don't know that we've done as much marketing as we probably could do. For instance, we did raise the exceptional education, pay. And I think we're all of the same agreement that we need to push that more on the marketing side. So we'll work with communications, because that's something that we are trying to do a better job of in our recruitment and our retention efforts. We look at it in terms of what does total compensation look like, and that's not just your pay, but that's your benefits, that's your retirement, that's the other good things we can talk about working at Tucson, working in the district. So we are looking at how we can improve that part of our operation. I'm gonna when we get off this, I will kind of regroup to see where we are with the survey, so we can get a better schedule to push that out and get information back that might be beneficial to all of you as well as to us as we plan ahead.
Another thing you had mentioned earlier was the wellness program, the ability to get like a kickback on your insurance if you meet certain steps through the wellness program. Is there an option to, if we had to increase the cost of the plan, to also increase the rebate, and maybe that would bring in some more money, since it sounds like not very many people are doing it anyway?
So the answer, I guess, is yes. I mean, I'm not sure we're going to be meeting, I think, in the next week or so with our consultants to talk specifically about benefits. I mean, about the wellness offerings, because as you said, it's limited in its current design. And yes, the financial or the incentives do help. And our goal is, how do we broaden this? So it might be that we increase the incentive, or we find other mechanisms, or leverage technology, whatever it is that we need to do to broaden that participation. That's our goal. So we are aware of a couple of other options where the engagement participation rate is closer to 50%, for instance. So that's what we're trying to learn more about, so we can incorporate that in this round of new benefits plan. So that is definitely hot on, that's right on the radar for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that might make it more palatable to change the 85-15 split. If my cost is going up $500 a year, but then I'm able to get $500 more in the incentive back, then that could change some opinions.
Okay, that's good. That's a good input.
All right, any other discussion or questions on this item? All right, well, thank you, John, for your time and all of that information. Super helpful. Lots of ideas swirling around now. So it sounded like it definitely would be helpful to have those different options, like A, B, and C, and see what alternatives are available, how much of a difference is that option going to make versus another.
Right. Okay, well, we'll work with Ricky and we'll produce something for your review.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 6.1, the bond election update.
I would just like to say thank you to everybody who supported the bond, went out and did walks and did everything they could to get this passed. It was a 5-0 vote, which has not been in a long time. So we had the full support of my colleagues. I'm couldn't be more pleased, not just as a board member, but also as an alum and a parent. And I'm really looking forward to what our upcoming bond oversight committee will be doing. But just wanted to say thanks to everybody who really supported the bond. It was, I was writing up until like 7:59 p.m. so that night. So it was a long time coming. And I also think that, yes, there was, was only 33% of the vote or whatever it was that came out to vote, but we had a large margin. And I think that kind of shows what, that perhaps, the community is starting to feel a little different about our district, and that they're starting to believe in what we're doing. And they're driving by these schools every day and seeing what needs to be fixed up, and curb appeal, and reading the stories about the HVAC systems that happen every summer, right? So I'm just want to say thank you.
Jason, it says that this was your item. Was there anything you had to present for this?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, just for context, that one of the very first pieces that started this ball in motion was the BAC. And so we made a recommendation that brought this to the governing board. There were certainly other pieces that impacted this, but the BAC bringing a recommendation to the governing board was certainly part of the impetus. So I just wanted to say that it's a proud moment for all of us and the work that we've done on the BAC, and thankful that the governing board thought this was the right direction to go.
Yeah, and then as Ricky had put in the chat there, there's the bond oversight committee, which is going to have 13 members. So if you know anyone who'd be interested in joining that committee, he has the link there in the chat for that.
Yeah, the only limitation is you have to live in the district. So that's the only real limitation, but otherwise it's open to employees and non-employees alike.
All right, anything else on that item? All right, so moving on to 7.1, the request for information. So I think definitely with the budgets that we discussed, the different options for those. And then going back to the school safety, I think I would like to get more information about, it sounds like we're discussing the idea of ratios, whether that's student to monitor or monitor to acreage. Just some more information for someone who's more involved in that field about what numbers might look like. Not necessarily that we need to recommend a certain number, but I'm just curious to see like how far are we off from what would be recommended by someone in that field. Is there any other information on budgets or school safety that y'all would feel would be helpful for us to make a motion?
I have one.
Yeah,
I would be interested in finding out more about the disciplinary statistics by school, to see how that ties into the request. And I know that can be a moving target from year to year, but at least to give me a foundation of where those things lie currently in respect to this recommendation.
Mm-hmm. And that reminds me, Stacy had mentioned the acreage for the middle schools as well. Mm-hmm. All right, anything else? Okay, moving on to 7.2, future goals and priorities. So at our next meeting on December 14th, we'll be discussing DSEG. Ricky, do you have any notes about that you want to add?
No, I don't at this time.
All right. So I will see you guys on December 14th. Thank you all for your time today.
Okay, thank
Have a
you.
good night, everybody.
Real quick, I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Any opposed or abstain? All right. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.